Dave Chawner is a comedian. He's joining me right now. Let's just ask your opinion very quickly, Dave. Do you think it matters whether Tony Abbott, former Australian Prime Minister, has views that you or I may not share about gay marriage, or perhaps a woman's role in the home in a marriage? Does it matter if you want to hire someone as a trade advisor, what their personal views are on those issues?
I think it's really about how those views manifest, though, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, if he won't work with anyone who is ever a woman, then I think that is troubling at best. But if they're, sort of to do with, as you pointed out, religious views, then you're on really dodgy ground. This is the reason that I'm not a politician, because that is an incredibly hard question.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I do think the acceptance that people have different views might be one of the things that we perhaps thought we were defending in this country. But, well, let's talk about this with a woman who knows Tony Abbott rather well. Peta Credlin was Tony Abbott's chief of staff when he was Prime Minister of Australia 2013 to 2015, now working for Sky News Australia. Delighted to say she joins us live from Australia. Good morning to you, Peta.
Well, good evening at my end. Great to be with you.
Very good point. Yes, indeed. 9 hours ahead. This row has really got going in the last few days. We actually had a questioning of the Health Secretary over here, Matt Hancock, yesterday, someone asking him point blank, should you hire a homophobe and a misogynist in a role as a trade envoy for the United Kingdom? Boris Johnson's Downing Street now seeming to get a bit lukewarm about the prospect of Tony Abbott joining in any sort of role advising the government. Let's get back to basics here. You worked for him. You're a woman. Is he a misogynist?
Absolutely not. And I'm going to push back really hard. He was in Parliament for 25 years. Every single one of his chiefs of staff were women, right? Now, I'm a hardline conservative. People can watch me on TV in Australia. I've been around for a long time in politics. Do you think that someone who hated women would hire me? And do you think someone like me would work for a bloke that hated women? It's just complete and utter rubbish. I mean, the guy's got 3 sisters, a very strong independent wife, 3 daughters. He's not a misogynist. And I'll go to that speech that often gets bandied around, Julia Gillard's famous misogynist speech in the Parliament when she was PM. That was a speech trying to defend her speaker, and she was in a hung parliament, so she lost the speaker, she was in real trouble, who had made really offensive comments about female genitalia. Now, rather than try and call him out on that and lose her speaker, she went on the attack over Abbott. And I just think it's rubbish. The claim of homophobia, well, his sister is gay. His sister is gay, and she was so well supported by Abbott inside the family. I know this personally. When she came out in her 40s, she's since married a woman. Abbott was at the service at the wedding. They disagree on the issue of the definition of marriage, or they did disagree. I mean, Australia has resolved that issue, but just because someone might disagree on the definition of marriage doesn't mean that you're a homophobe. And this is about freedom of speech. People can have different views, particularly on issues of religion. And I think this is where we need to focus. Is this a trade appointment? If you want someone who can help you post-Brexit get deals done, he's your man.
Well, this is the interesting thing. His sister, Christine, I mean, they campaigned on opposite sides in that debate over having equality in marriage and allowing gay couples to marry. She said in a statement, "It is nothing short of dishonesty for politicians who do not know Tony to label him a homophobe and a misogynist for the purposes of scoring cheap political points. As a woman who has always been part of his life and who came out to him as gay in my early 40s, as you mentioned," she says, "I know incontrovertibly that Tony is neither of these things. In reality, he's a man of great conviction and intellect, an unabashed conservative, but with great compassion, respect for others." This is what I think it comes down to, isn't it? Because the misogyny comments appear to come about, as you say, because of criticism from the former Prime Minister Julia Gillard, but also because of comments he made about housewives and, while you're doing the ironing, knowing that, I've cut your energy costs. It's fascinating that an awful lot of the people saying this is misogyny seem to ignore the fact that every single poll seems to show that the majority of home chores are done by women in pretty much most countries. Yeah. But apparently we're supposed to pretend that's not the case. But also, as you say, the homophobia, because he campaigned against gay marriage, we know in that it was a plebiscite, wasn't it? Well, there was a sort of a vote in people giving their a sort of mass opinion poll in Australia.
Right. And he pushed for that.
And he pushed for it. But 38% of Australians voted against having equal marriage for gay people. And his argument on this was simply he's a Catholic. He considered at one point becoming, actually going into the priesthood. And his views on this are based on his religious convictions, not a hatred of gay people. I disagree
Absolutely
with his
not.
views, but does that make him a homophobe?
It makes him a politician of conviction. I mean, Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd, both voted against gay marriage. Malcolm Turnbull was at one stage against gay marriage. Tony has had that view for a long time. He maintained that view. I think it would have been a very difficult view to have inside his own family. But he and his sister respectfully campaign on opposite sides of the issue. Their relationship's stronger than ever. We should be able to, nowadays more than ever, be able to conduct, debates over issues of values and policy with civility. We can disagree with each other as long as we're respectful. And this is exactly what happened. That doesn't make him a homophobe. I mean, there were plenty of gay people in the office who were his closest and most trusted advisors. He has a very good friend who was a Malcolm for many, many years, is now a Kate. Tony was one of the first people that Kate knew that she came out to as transgender. So this idea that he has some sort of hatred at the core of his being is wrong. He's just a pretty principled conservative on a lot of issues. And on the trade stuff, we had a trade deal with China that had sat on the desk of other governments and bureaucrats for a long time, over a decade. He got that done, and South Korea and Japan, all in a 12-month period. Now, for Australia, that represents 50% of our export earnings, 50%. All those deals done. Our wine's up, our beef's up 220%. We would be unimaginable without trade. You're going to leave the curtains and the apron strings of the EU behind. And Britain, you're going to have to fight against a country like Australia, who's been out there fighting on trade deals for a long time. You're going to have to do that now under new circumstances in a really, really competitive post-COVID world. Why wouldn't you want one of the best in your corner? I just think it makes sense.
Do you think a lot of the criticism is down to the fact, as you say, he is a staunch conservative, he is a staunch Catholic, he doesn't play along with the orthodoxies on climate change, he's a supporter of Brexit. I mean, these are all massive moral offences for many people on the liberal left these days, as opposed to whether or not he can do the job.
And the boats, don't forget, in Australia, we had 50,000 illegal arrivals under the former government when he was the opposition leader. And he said, you elect me, Australia, and I will stop the boats. And that's precisely what happened. Within a matter of months, we haven't had the boat arrivals that we had under the former government. So there's that. He sacked a carbon tax. The left went into, absolute frenzy about. This is the problem with modern left debate. You're not allowed to be different or wrong. It's a moral component now. You're not just wrong or they disagree with you. You're actually bad. There's a moral turpitude to all of this. And this is what, this has been pushed around by Australian left-wing journalists, I might have, tell you and your listeners in Britain, as much as it is, the Nicola Sturgeons of the world and others who are pushing it around. But, I think Boris Johnson, Downing Street, they should just look at the evidence and make up their own mind.
Have you spoken to Tony Abbott about this? And if so, or if you haven't, what do you suspect his feelings are about these slurs against him?
I think that they've been around. He has copped it. He has a thick skin. He has copped it. He tries to see the good in people and he says, if people know me, they know that that's not who I am, and look at my record. I mean, he took 25 seats off Labor over 2 elections. I think people judge his political ability fairly, at least in Australia, but he inspires a lot of hate from the left. And I often say to him, that's sort of praise in disguise, if I can say that. If you're still riling them up a year after you left Parliament, it tells you must be standing for something.
And just finally, if Boris Johnson does cave, and we know that this is, Tony Abbott's been put forward by our International Trade Secretary, Liz Truss, but there's been a little bit of backtracking, it would appear, from Number 10 in the last couple of days with this onslaught of criticism. Front page, a lot of the papers today brought up in Parliament in the last couple of days, criticism, the shadows, ministers and the like. If Boris Johnson does cave and decides not to appoint him, do you think that Britain will lose out? Do you think that will affect our ability to do big trade deals with countries like China, like Japan, like South Korea?
I think you need the best people on the field. You need the best team to get you these deals. And I mean what I say. You know, you have been for many, many decades running in behind the EU to do these sorts of deals. You now got to stand on your own 2 feet, make Brexit real. I would be wanting sort of the best sort of arrows in my quiver. And particularly when you talk about the Asian region, highly competitive. It's a region that not many Brits know as well as Australia does. And it's changing dramatically, as we've seen in recent months with China. So, I mean, I'm not going to tell Downing Street how to make their decisions or what decisions to make. I just think they should make the right decision for Britain, the best decision for a strong post-Brexit United Kingdom. And I reckon my old boss has got the runs on the board to show that he can do it.
Okay, Peta Credlin, thank you very much indeed. Tony Abbott's former Chief of Staff giving her thoughts on all of this. Wonder if that's changed your mind, if you thought that Tony Abbott was many of the things that he's been accused. But thank you very much, Peta Credlin, now with Sky News Australia.